Can you take me through what we're smelling when it starts to rain?
The word for that smell is petrichor, which means rock plus the blood of the gods. So it's this fantastic word that's like super hardcore because it's a smell that evolutionarily we're really attuned to. And there are a few different things that contribute to that smell. One is lightning turns different molecules in the air into ozone, which has a distinctive smell. Another factor is that plants have little hairs that contain oils that have specific smells. And so those are released. But the one that I know the most about is a compound called geosmin. And so that is something that is created by a type of soil-dwelling bacteria called actinomycetes. And they make it to attract an invertebrate called a springtail.
So rain itself does not smell. It's what's in the ground that rain is landing on that smells.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I don't know that water itself has that much of a smell to it.
It's not always there though. When is it there and when is it not there?
The compound is made by bacteria that live in the soil. And so most of the time, and they do it in response to stress. So stress from lack of rain. So if you are a bacteria and you want to make sure that your genes survive, which is what drives all of evolution, right? This type of bacteria is immobile. So instead of moving to a place where they're ensuring their offspring are going to have really healthy conditions for growth, they create these spores. And then those spores are produced in the bacteria at the same time as the smell geosmin, sort of like a flower produces nectar and pollen at the same time because they want the bees to smell the nectar, come get their hairy, fuzzy bodies all covered in pollen, and then distribute that elsewhere, the pollen, so that the plants are cross-pollinating, right? And so for geosmin and spores, the bacteria are going, oh my gosh, there's a drought, we're going to die, but I want my genes to survive, so I'm going to procreate. And so what I'll do is I'll make these spores that are really hardy little structures, and they will produce those at the same time that they're making geosmin. And so that is attracting a certain kind of invertebrate called a springtail. They're adorable, they're tiny, they're about as long as a nickel is wide. And they look sort of like if a grain of rice had the legs and antenna of an ant. And so this little critter comes up to the geosmin for food. And so they are ingesting the geosmin as well as some of the spores. And then they also have hair on their bodies. And so they get covered in the spores. And so then they go off springing along. They have this little sort of hinge structure on their tail and they go spring, spring, spring. And they're distributing the spores of the bacterium so that they are perpetuated.
So is petrichor a new term? Is this relatively new science?
We've known that there was a specific smell associated with rain for a long time. The first people to identify that it was related to some sort of a chemical compound were Australian scientists, I believe in the mid-1960s. When it rains, two things are happening. One is the moisture, the humidity in the air starts to enter into those little air cavities and pockets, and that forces the geosmin out into the atmosphere where it can travel by wind, and that's how it gets to our noses. The other thing is the raindrops are, and sending little soil molecules up into the air, disrupting the structure. And so the geosmin that is living in the tiny, teeny little air pockets underneath the soil, underneath the surface of the soil, are then introduced to the air where we smell them in the wind. So the compounds themselves become more and more present in the soil the longer a drought persists, but they are not really detectable to us until the soil is disturbed. So if you go dig a hole in the backyard after it has been raining for a while. Or if you go for a hike in the woods, you'll also encounter that smell. If you go into a basement, right, you'll encounter that smell because you're disturbing these compounds that have been accumulating there. The theory, and I'm not sure if this has been demonstrated or not, and probably can't be, but the theory is that humans need rain to survive. And so we are really responsive to and drawn to the smell of rain on the way and rain that has arrived. So the Australian scientists who distilled, something that I think then had to be further purified to geosmin were the ones to give it the name petrichor. And so they chose something super hardcore, the rock that contains the blood of the gods. And from there we get geosmin, which is also a cool compound word. It comes from the words for geo, like geography, so that means earth. And then the suffix means smell. So it literally means the smell of the earth.
The smell of lightning? Lightning has a smell?
Sure. So what we're smelling is not lightning itself, but rather the fact that as it travels through the atmosphere, lightning is heating up different particles that compose our atmosphere. And one of the byproducts of that disruption is ozone. So ozone is 3 oxygen molecules that are bonded together, and it has a very distinctive smell. So we associate that with lightning because it becomes created by lightning. It's not that lightning has a smell, it's that lightning creates this conditions for the ozone to become more present in the atmosphere and more detectable by us.
Now, I haven't experienced this, but I've heard people say that snow has a smell as well. Do you have any knowledge on that?
Interesting. I definitely can imagine the smell of snow. I wonder if part of what people are noticing is the lack of pollution in the air. So snow falls through the air sort of like little scrub brushes, and it's knocking out a lot of the pollutants. Rain does this as well, but snow just has a lot more surface area. And so after a rain or a snowfall, another thing that people associate with more the after effects of rain is that the air smells really good because there's less pollution in it and less gunk that's flying around. All different kinds of matter is in the air at all times. Not all of it is pleasant. So especially if you're in a city, the smell is perhaps the absence of things. I'm not entirely sure if there would be something else that's introduced.
Huh.